Hey everyone, welcome back to John's Watch. Today I'm taking a look at a new game called Eternal Strands. This game was released on January 28th, 2025. Its regular price is $39.99 US, or your regional equivalent, and it's developed and published by Yellow Brick Games. Now, Yellow Brick Games were founded back in 2020, and this is their debut title. And I checked their website. It says they kind of quickly grew to about 30 people, and as of right now, they've got a team of about 60 people. So not like a tiny team by any means, but this is firmly in the double A gaming space, I would say. This is so good for a team's debut game. Before I get too into the game, I gotta say, I am blown away by how polished and good this looks for a debut title. Really well done. At the time of recording, I've played just under 4 hours of the game, and I played all of that before it came out, so all the footage you're seeing is technically pre-release footage, but I recorded it 3 days before it came out, so the game is not going to change too much between when I recorded my video or the footage and the actual release date. So what is Eternal Strands? Well, the Steam page says, fight epic towering creatures while blending magical abilities with an arsenal of powerful weapons to keep the world from crumbling in this third-person action-adventure game. Sums it up pretty well. You're gonna see some of these towering creatures as we go through the video. Maybe you've already seen one already, I don't know. But I feel like the best way to describe this game is that it really takes bits and pieces of loads of other games and builds them together into Eternal Strands. For example, it's got the stamina and climbing system of Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. It's also got the elemental resistant armor from Breath of the Wild, where you'd need cold armor to go into cold areas and vice versa. The boss fights are a little bit of Shadow of the Colossus, Monster Hunter, a little bit of Dark Souls. The graphics are a little bit World of Warcraft, a little bit Kingdoms of Amalur. The core gameplay outside of the boss fights, and I might be out to lunch on this one, seems to me to be like an extraction shooter, which is not a game genre I thought would blend with all these other ones. And I haven't played any extraction shooters. I don't play Hunt Showdown or Escape from Tarkov or anything. So if you're familiar with those, let me know if I'm wrong, but I do think the core gameplay is kind of extraction shooter. So this game starts with a real lore dump of an opening cutscene, and at first I was like, really doing an exposition dump right here. But as I got further into the game, so much attention has been paid to crafting a unique world, unique story, unique backstory for pretty much every aspect of this game world, that it really didn't bother me in hindsight. I was watching the cutscene and it's all these proper nouns being thrown at you, and they're all obviously pretty much meaningless to you when you're just starting up the game, but as you play more and all the characters talk to you about how well crafted this world is, it just kind of made me think how impressive the writing is in hindsight. I'm just going to read a little bit from the press kit for a very brief description of kind of the backstory. It says, decades ago, the Enclave unexpectedly sealed itself away from the rest of the world. The once powerful center of magical wonders now lies dormant. After finding a way through the believed to be impenetrable barrier, a band of weavers, who are powerful magical users who blend sword and sorcery to devastating effect, must peel back the mysteries of this lost land. So basically there's this area of the world called the Enclave that's been sealed away with a huge magical wall. And basically once you get through the prologue, you're inside the Enclave. And so you play as a character called Brynn, who is the leader, sort of a band of weavers called a weaver band. Weavers are the magic casters, magic users, and she's the point person for the Weaver band, so she goes out and scouts. She does everything, because you play as Brynn, so you do everything. And so as Brynn, you play through the prologue, you learn how to melee attack, how to use your bow as a ranged attack, you learn a little bit about the magic systems of the game. At the start, you've got this kinetic magic power, which basically lets you pick things up from a distance and throw them with telekinesis, I guess. You can use this to literally pick up rocks that are on the ground and throw them at enemies to do a bunch of damage. You can pick up like these explosive fire bulbs that are just growing in the forest areas and throw those at enemies, and they blow up and do a bunch of damage. You also use this ability to break through certain barriers, so maybe you'll come across like an archway that is blocked off with these wooden boards. You can either just go up to the boards and attack them with your sword, or a lot more fun is just grabbing rocks and flinging them at the boards to break them. It's great. You also have this frost magic spell, which lets you shoot out just kind of a stream of ice in front of you and really quite far away from you. And you can use this to stop enemies in place. Later on in the game, you'll come across these ranged enemies who love running away from you as you get close and just shooting you from a distance. So what you can do with them is when you get close, or not that close because you do have a good bit of range with your frost magic, you can just shoot them with the ice beam and they'll just be stuck in place and they'll be trying to break out of the ice, and you can just go up to them and wail on them with your sword. It's very satisfying. You can also use the ice magic to counteract environmental threats and dangers, I guess. Early on in the prologue, a big fire-breathing drake wyvern thing lights a forest on fire, and you're kind of stuck, and you have to kind of carve a path through the flames with your ice magic. That part did not work very well when I was playing, but theoretically it sounds really cool, and later on in the game I was kind of able to counteract fire with the ice magic and craft kind of sort of safe paths through the fire. Something to be aware of though with the fire and the ice though is, as I mentioned earlier, your armor has stats for these two elements. It has a certain amount of fire resist and a certain amount of ice resist. And depending on what your resist number is, you will likely take damage when you're in contact with either of these elements. Obviously, fire, if you're walking through fire, you're going to take damage unless you have quite a high fire resistant armor. Same thing with ice. If you're spraying ice to make a path through the fire, if you stand on the ice for too long, you'll take frost damage, and you'll be slowed down, and you'll take damage over time. So it's a really cleverly put together system, and it's one that I absolutely despise. That is one of the many things I disliked about Breath of the Wild, was having to make sure you have the right armor to go up to the mountain or whatever. I couldn't stand that, and it's very much the same here. I just want armor with a good defense and just kind of keep upgrading it throughout the game. I don't want to have to swap between, like, here's my fire resistant armor, here's my ice resistant armor. And it especially got to me because as I got further through the game, I got to a couple of bosses, I got to a fire-breathing dragon, and this kind of like ice-breathing lizard thing, which was very cool. And I also found this like completely frozen village, so I was like, okay, I will just go into making the most ice-resistant armor I can. And I made the most ice-resistant top armor I could, and the most ice-resistant boots I could. And I was still taking ice damage from trying to walk through the ice and battle this ice boss. And that really annoyed me because I had like purposely gone out of my way to minimize like the defensive bonuses of my armor and just go for the ice resistance. And it still hadn't done anything. I might as well not have had the ice resistant armor on. So that's just a personal preference. I disliked that in Breath of the Wild. I disliked it in this game as well. Once you're through the prologue, you set up your camp with your group of people. Every character is voiced. Every character is well voiced, which is great. They're all really good voice actors in this game. And then you can start getting into the core gameplay loop, which, like I said, is kind of extraction shooter. Basically, from the hub, you go out into the next level, the next area, and as you go through, you collect all sorts of materials. You will see kind of like sparkles coming out of boxes and barrels and stuff, and you bash those around to get, you know, like cotton and leather and stuff like that. You can knock down trees to get wood. You can smash up bushes to get various colors of linen. You can get materials from killing enemies, like if you kill these wolf creatures, you get fur and hide and leather and things like that. And so pretty much the idea is that the core gameplay loop is going into these levels, collecting a bunch of materials, and bringing them safely back home. And once you get far enough in, you get kind of like a permanent homeward bone item, which you can just cycle to on your hotbar, and you charge it up and use it, and it'll warp you and all your materials back to the base. If you don't use that, you can find an exit in the level. There's a couple of different exits. You can also just find a fast travel point. There are not that many. I think there's one in the first level and two in the second level. But you can always use those to warp back to town. Or if you die, you can basically select 4 materials from your inventory to protect and bring back with you. And like I said, that is the core gameplay loop, really. You're going into these dungeons and grabbing a bunch of materials. You get a ton of quests. They're all pretty manageable, it seems like. There's always like your main quest, and then it kind of gets split into like side quests, and I think the other category was kind of boss fight quests. The boss fights are insanely cool. The first boss fight, the first proper boss fight I did, was this big walking Colossus thing, and basically you had to climb on it like Shadow of the Colossus, like Breath of the Wild, and crawl up its body and knock these fasteners off its armor. You would smash the fasteners and it would knock chunks of the armor off, which would then expose its skin underneath the armor, and you would have to attack that skin until it like hardened up and you couldn't attack that part anymore. And you just had to keep crawling all over its body and open up its armor and attack it until eventually it died, and it was just so cool. I was blown away by that boss fight. You could do the same against the ice lizard I was talking about. I climbed up on its tail and smashed its tail a bunch, and then I noticed it kind of like cracked, and my attacks weren't doing very much to it, so I kind of figured I had to move on to other body parts. So I just like kind of scrambled around and tried to hold onto its leg and smash that up a bunch as well. But I actually only managed to kill the first 2 Colossus bosses. The ice lizard obviously did ice damage, and my ice resistance was not high enough to survive without any assistance. You have these 2 resistance potions that you have one of per, I don't know, expedition. One resists ice, one resists fire. They only last maybe like 2 minutes. I'm not even sure if it's that long. So basically I tried fighting this ice lizard, and eventually my resistance potion expired, and I only had 3 healing potions. You can find more healing potions to a maximum of 3 as you're wandering around the level, but once I ran out of them in the boss fight, I was kind of screwed. So my 4 hours was really split into 3 very distinct like sections for me. The first probably about an hour or so, it was mostly just the prologue and just about starting kind of the core gameplay loop, and I was not enjoying the first hour at all. I had like 2 bugs back to back in the first hour, which wasn't great. There was a weird one where like right at the start, the dragon comes and sets the forest on fire, and he does this in a cutscene, and right after the cutscene finished, it restarted the cutscene for some reason, but it was like in the world that the dragon had already set on fire. It was just a very strange bug. And then once I got into the first expedition level and started doing the actual game, I was like, this is sweet. And I got to that first Colossus boss, clambering all over him, smashing him up. Thought this was great. So the second chunk I absolutely loved. I was having a complete blast with it. And then the third chunk was when enemies started getting tougher, started seeing kind of all the same enemies over and over. And also there was just so much focus on your elemental resistances, which I just didn't have enough of despite having played for a few hours. And that just kind of put me off it, unfortunately. There's also a system where each day, or each chunk of day, I guess, because days are divided up into a morning, an afternoon, and a night, and you can always go explore in any of these time chunks. And in each time chunk, there's a random chance for there to be some kind of like weather phenomenon. So one of the later ones I got was I went in during the daytime. I went into the first area, and there was a heat wave going on, which just meant that if any enemies were casting fire, and there were quite a few of them, the fire would really spread and do a bunch of damage. But there was a chunk where it was 3 expeditions back to back to back, all had this everything is icy event, and I was just like, really? Like, I would load into the world, and I would like step forward and start taking ice damage, and I was like, great, well, there's nothing I can do, and I just had to reset and go on to the next day kind of thing. There was just such a reliance on the elemental resistances, and like I said, that's just a system I really hated in Breath of the Wild, and so I did not like it in this one either. Having said all that, I think this is an incredibly high quality product, ridiculously impressive for a studio's debut title. There's plenty I didn't have a chance to touch on in this video, like the gorgeous animations in a couple of the opening cutscenes. They look phenomenal. So I think I'm going to leave my video there. I'm probably not going to play any more of this game because it was starting to annoy me by the end of my 4 hours, but I still recognize that this is a really, really good game, actually. If any of the games I mentioned as clear influences appeal to you, you'll probably enjoy Eternal Strands. If you think the idea of Breath of the Wild mixed with Monster Hunter, mixed with Shadow of the Colossus, mixed with a little bit of Dark Souls, mixed with Escape from Tarkov, I don't know about that one, sounds good to you, you'll probably really like Eternal Strands. Thank you guys very much for watching. Make sure you leave a like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you guys later. Bye!